PS2ManyGames.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of PS2ManyGames, another top 10 for you if you will, and probably the most divisive one so far, top 10 racing games on the PS2. Now before we go into the actual top 10, there's going to be quite a few rules for this one. Obviously first rule's got to be on the PS2, duh. Rule number 2, only one game per franchise. Why am I including this rule? If we had just top 10 PS2 racing games, there would be at least 4 Need for Speed racing games on this list. And to be honest, I don't want to be just all Need for Speed. They're amazing games, but it's going to be one per franchise. You got to give some of the other franchises some love, because some of them are very good, but they're forgotten because obviously Need for Speed. And lastly, not so much a rule, just a basic following. There's no exclusivity this time. These games could have appeared on the Xbox, they could have appeared on the GameCube, but if they have to have been at least on the PS2. So let's get rolling, shall we? Pun fully intended. I'm sorry. So coming at number 10 and barely made the list, Crash Nitro Kart. To be honest, this is making the list on nostalgia alone, pretty much. It's not as good as the original. The PS1 original is by far the best Crash kart, if you will. You disagree with that? That's fair enough. That's my opinion. This handles reasonably well. The story's a bit stupid, but all racing game stories are a bit stupid. But obviously, it's got Crash. It's got all the Crash characters. It's fun. What you're going to find is most of these games are fun. You play games because it's fun. Does it hold up? Probably not. There's better games that hold up. Obviously, 9 better games, because obviously they made the list. But simply put, this would not have made the list if I didn't have the one per franchise rule. This would not even got the top 20 if I didn't have the one per franchise rule. This pretty much gets on this list through a bit of luck, a decent amount of gameplay. The way it looks, kind of still. Well, it doesn't. No, I can't say that. The way it looks is not that great. It's very kiddie, childish, nostalgia kind of thing. We'll go with that. That barely makes the list, and trust me, I had to fight for that to make the list, because there are other games which I think play better. To be honest, it was either this or Ridge Racer 5 at number 10, and Ridge Racer 5 is probably the better game, but not as fun. Plus, Ridge Racer 5 is ridiculously easy. Sometimes a game being too easy actually takes away from it, and this isn't easy, so we'll leave it at that. Top 10, Crash Nitro Kart. What a glorious start to this list. Coming at number 9 and one of the sleepers on the list, ATV OffRoad Fury 2. Now, this actually is quite a decent game, let me explain. So obviously this is your quad bikes, your off-road racing. This game is not all about the speed. This game is about the handling, how you handle while jumping through the air. Physics in other words, the physics is pretty good, and how you land it. This requires actual strategy and thinking. And it does play quite well. And it is the best off-road game on the PS2, because obviously there's a lot of off-road ATV, MX racing games. This one's probably the best one. And this actually was one of my favourite ones that I went back to. This actually holds up pretty well. The fact of the matter is, you have to try. I mean, there's certain racing games where you get to the front, and unless you're really terrible at a game, you're not going to lose from the front. This game, once you're in here, you got to glide the kart down to land perfectly flat or on an edge, because obviously the terrain's not flat, it's hilly for obvious reasons, it's off-road. So this game actually requires precision and management, and it's genuinely enjoyable. And this made it on the list to number 9. It could have been higher, to be honest, but I was after going back to other games, it kept going down the list further and further. But honestly, if you haven't tried it, try ATV OffRoad Fury 2. It's actually a surprisingly good game and handles quite well. It's a sleep, if you will. Game
Number 8.
The original Juiced. Now, this can be argued that it can get quite repetitive, this game. It can also be argued that they basically rode the wave that was the Need for Speed Underground franchise. So this came out, I believe, 1 year after Underground 2. And in many ways, this is basically very like Underground, just not as good. It's a very good game. It's still a good racing game, but obviously customizable, make your street racing kind of thing. Customizable street racer, make your cars look good. very much like Underground. To be honest, it's only made the list because it still holds up quite well gameplay wise. I don't like when it's just, how can I put this? Obviously they weren't implicitly copying Underground 2, but you can tell 1 year after the release of Underground 2 that very alike in some of their aspects, customizing, streetcar racing, night racing, that kind of thing. They rode the wave, so more power to them. There was a sequel, which wasn't as good as this one, to be honest. I tried that one, wasn't as good. It's still a decent game. I've never truly liked franchises that just like jump on the bandwagon. And for me, Juiced felt like a franchise that just jumped on the bandwagon. But once again, it's like Underground's like A star level. This is like B or C star level. But it's still a good game. Still makes the list. Still number 8. So give it a try. But after you played Underground 2, it's hard to go back to this and justify it like saying it's a better game, because it's not. It's number 8. Game number 7, Toka 3. The first of the racing simulators, if you will. By that I mean the games that are basically based on like real life racing. So obviously real racetracks, real like lap situations. They try to get it more true to life. Obviously the career mode of this, there are 6 different like racing styles, from off-road racing to like mock like Formula racing, if you know what I mean, like Formula 1, that kind of stuff. This is by far the best of the Toka racing games, and this makes the list because of the variety it gave you. 3, 2, 1. And this made the list of the variety it gave you and the amount of different cars and different tracks. I think there's like over 60 different real life cars and like 70 real life tracks. Variety, if you will. This is the first game on the list so far that is actually like they try to base it in some kind of real life. I mean, Juiced is kind of like real, but at the same time, yeah, you're not doing 200 miles an hour in a fucking excuse my language. 3, 2. Juiced is like based in real life, but it's not. I mean, you're not like hitting 150, 200 miles an hour down a road and dodging cars at high traffic. You're not. I mean, it ain't happening. Racetracks it is, because that's literally real life. Also, there is a little side note. I did put this on the list to try and get some kind of rally aspect into the top 10. The truth is, after this, there's no more rally games. There'll be a lot of honourable mentions of rally games, but compared to some of the racing games on this list, rallying does not hold up. Obviously, in England and in Europe, rallying is quite popular, but I don't know if in America that rallying is that super popular. I could be wrong. I'm wrong on many things in life. But number 7, Toka Racing's Driver 3, Toka Racing Simulator 3, if you will. Still holds up. Still a decent game. Number 7. Now, this is a bit weird, because the next game I had played a lot when I was a youngster, but I lost it. But I made it put on the list through nostalgia, and I actually think it's a good game. Road Trip Adventure. Now, imagine like a cartoon like racing game, where you're in a little like mini-S car, handles reasonably decent. You are racing. But imagine a racing game that also is a city simulator, because you build your own city through customization of your car and like winnings. It is a mixture of racing and city simulating. It's a really decent and shockingly good game. And I'm still disgusted that I haven't got it yet. It's not on the list, but I played it a lot when I was a youngster, and when I play this game again, I hope it holds up. But I'm putting it on this list because A, I loved it as a boy. B, I still love it, even though I haven't got the game yet. And C, I genuinely think other people need to try this game. It is probably the biggest sleep on the list. Road Trip Adventure. Honestly, it may look very cartoonish. It probably doesn't handle very well anymore, but I could be wrong. It still could handle very well. But the city customization is what made it unique. And ironically, it has not been re-released since. Apart from on the PS3, where it only got re-released, shockingly, in Europe. We actually got stuff in the Americans didn't get. What a twist! Yeah, but I do feel a bit bad about putting a game I don't actually technically own still, but I owned when I was a boy, so it counts. This might be a bit too high, but I don't care. I love this game. This game was awesome when I was a child. Honestly, Road Trip Simulator is literally practically worthless these days. If you can find one, get a copy and try it. Shockingly good game. And hopefully Dave will find footage to prove me right. Number 5 on the list, Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. By far the best Midnight Club game on the list, and much better than the original launch game. This game significantly improved on the original version, obviously made by Rockstar. Jesus. Actually, made by Rareware might have been better, actually. No, anyway, so getting sidetracked. Generally holds up to this day. Generally good graphics to this day. Fight me on that. And honestly, one of the games I would highly recommend to anyone. If you're going to play a Midnight Club game, play the third one and play the Dub Edition. As I mentioned in I think it was the previous list, the original Midnight Club I felt was just a tech demo for GTA 3. No, this one is like so much better, so significantly improved. And I can't emphasize enough, the best Midnight Club game ever made. Fight me on that too. Number 5 on the list feels about right for this game because the other 4 games are better, but this is about a spotlight. And I think the first game on the list that involves actual motorbike racing too, or actually riding a physical motorbike. I know, shocking, motorbike racing in a racing game. What a twist! Also, supposedly based on real life cities of like San Diego, Detroit, like real life cities. I think Atlanta's also in there. So once again, real life stuff. And I think their claim was one of the fastest racing games ever up to that point. They probably were right at that point, I don't know. But it still holds up, still plays very well. Number 5 on this list. Give it a try, you will not be disappointed. Or will you? No, you won't be disappointed. Game number 4, and probably the most expensive game on the list to this day, Automodicia, or Motodicia, I can't pronounce it. The Capcom racing game. This is probably the sleeper on the list, or the biggest sleeper on the list. It plays well, it looks fantastic because they use cel-shaded graphics, not one of the first, but it was becoming reasonably common at that point, and the cel-shaded graphics still hold up, for obvious reasons, because of the colours. Because of that reason, a really cartoony feel. Obviously real life cars, if you will. And it races really well, but by far the best part of it is the customizability. The garage mode, if you will. You start off with like your basic car, and through winning races and getting money, you can build up, get better cars, more customizable cars. Seems to be a common thread in the PS2 games list. But honestly, like most Capcom games, it plays really well. And apparently, I'm not the only one to notice this, because in the last year or so, it's gone up in price by... It's doubled. Pretty much doubled in price in the last year, because I bought that for £15 for CX about a year ago, and now it's just short of 30 quid. So that's a win, if you will. Most Capcom games still hold up on the PS2. Most. There are some terrible games. We'll get to that one day on the Capcom list of games, if you will. But this is the game that I implicitly asked people to try. It holds up. It looks good. Soundtrack's pretty decent. Give it a go. Right, we're now going to hit the top 3. And for those PS2 aficionados, you can roughly work out what the 3 franchises are most likely going to be. But in what order? And which game? So number 3, we're going to go for the Gran Turismo franchise first. Gran Turismo 3 was and still is fantastic, but Gran Turismo 4 was significantly better. Probably the best looking game on the list. And to this day, easily still playable and still enjoyable. And who doesn't like a 24-hour race? a literal 24-hour race. Nobody. Nobody likes that. But in all seriousness, the amount of cars to customize, the amount of real-life tracks and some made-up tracks, the soundtrack still pretty much holds up. Some of the songs hold up, but the decent soundtrack. The number of official manufacturers and the handling, but most importantly, customizability. And shockingly, it's not that easy. You have to really customize and change gear settings. You have to actually work hard. Or you can take a reasonably good car, go rallying, and get really expensive cars really easily by just winning 2 races. Which is a strategy. If you ever play Gran Turismo 4 from the start, just get a decent car like a Polo, tune it up a little, go rallying, win, and you'll start getting like rally cars, which are significantly better than most of the cars in the game. And then you hit the ground running. You are Alan Rickmaning this. Okay, sorry, I think I mentioned before, when I use the phrase Alan Rickmaning, which obviously is terrible English, get past it.
Or you do what exactly? Hit me with that fish.
Real side note, Alan Rickman, fantastic actor, passed away too early. I think everyone knows this by now, but his first actual film was Die Hard. So he literally hit the ground running into acting. His first acting role was Hans Gruber. I think it was Hans Gruber. It's one of the Grubers. And obviously, he started at the top and just kept going. A feat that not many people have achieved. Anyway, back to games. Yeah, Gran Turismo 4. Still fun to play, still fun to customise. And if you've got an affinity to, let's say, Honda, Peugeot, Seat. I don't know why you enjoy Seat. Seat cars are awful, by the way. If you've got affinity to certain manufacturers, you can drive anything. Except Porsches. Porsches are not allowed. They didn't have the Porsche franchise. They got the RUF franchise, which is basically modded Porsches. No Ferraris, no Porsches, everything else. Best number 3 on the list, also came to this day, still holds up. Best looking driving game on the PS2, still. I mean, it had a director, that should tell you something. Some people should think it's been number 1. No, it's made number 3. Then what's the top 2, you ask? Let us find out. So, number 2 on the list, it's the Burnout franchise. And to be honest, this came very close to being number 1. Like, shockingly close. But the question now is, which Burnout game is it? The 2 best ones by far are Burnout 3 and Burnout Revenge. So which one's the better one? It's Burnout 3. Burnout 3 is the better one. It by far still holds up. The fast-paced racing, the takedown aspect, which Burnout 3 was based on, the purposely destroying your opponents, is still fun to this day. But also the real-life aspect. If you hit the wall, your car gets totaled too. I know. Shocking. The utter fun this game brings to this day. And the fact that sometimes if you total yourself, you get points if your crash crashes other cars. But also the hilariousness of you're basically killing people left, right, and centre. And by that I mean crashing into trams, other cars. You're basically a mass murderer in these cars. And shockingly, after every crash, you live. This is by far the most extreme version of don't take it seriously on this list. And for that reason alone, it holds up, handles well, and is by far one of the best games on the PS2. Period. It really is. One of the best games on the PS2. And as I said, this came shockingly close to going number 1. I think you might work out now what franchise is number 1. This came shockingly close, and this is a must play on the PS2. People, you need to try Burnout 3 just for the aspect. Gotta go fast. Burnout 3 number 2 is awesome. Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. Before we get to number 1, obviously there's going to be some honorable mentions, and there's quite a lot of them. So let's go through them one by one.
Honorable mention.
Outrun 2006. Actually quite a decent game. Actually nearly made a top 10 list. But it just fell short because I felt it was a bit generic. Obviously it's basically a remake of the original Outrun. I didn't like the original Outrun to begin with. This is alright, but it doesn't make my top 10. It might make your top 10, doesn't make my top 10.
Honorable mention.
Now comes a list of obviously real-life racing franchise. The IndyCar franchise. Actually a decent game, but not top 10 worthy. Not even close.
Honorable mention.
NASCAR!
Honorable mention.
The MotoGP franchise.
Honorable mention.
Micro Machines. A generally fun game. But unlike the original Micro Machines on the Sega Mega Drive, which is amazing, this game felt a bit bland to me, and I'll be honest, didn't even come close to make the top 10. That might upset some people, but that's how I feel.
Honorable mention.
All the Ford games.
Honorable mention.
This is going to anger someone I know. Colin McRae franchise. Once again, that nearly made the top 10. and it's probably the best rally franchise on the PS2. But compared to the top 10 on this list, it's just not that good. And by that I mean it's just not as good as the top 10. That might be a double misnomer, but you knows what I mean. That would probably be number 11 at a push. I'm sorry.
Honorable mention.
Splashdown. Remember Wave Race where you're jet ski racing? This is the PS2 version, and actually is a decent game. But wave racing isn't my bag, if you will. So I didn't make the list in that reason.
Honorable mention.
Bomberman Kart. It's cute. I don't enjoy it. It's like there's a lot of these like childish like racing games. Bomberman Kart, Crash Nitro Kart, bloody Crazy Frog Kart, or Crazy Frog Racing. They made 2 of them. I'm not even going to mention it, apart from now, obviously.
Honorable mention.
RPM tuning. How far do you stretch racing games? Is horse racing? Because they weren't going to make the list. They weren't even going to come close to making the list.
Honorable mention.
Groovejet Slot Car Racer. It's awful.
Honorable mention.
I mean, like the Superbike games. Not going to be on the list. International Super Karts. Awful game. It's on the shelf. I'm not getting up. It's that bad. I'm not even going to show you. You know what? Screw it. One of the worst games I've played on PS2. And so I'll be like, that's actually a good game. No, you're lying. You're lying. It's not a good game. So now it's time for the top of the list, number 1. And this might be shocking to you, but obviously it's going to be a Need for Speed game. But which one? There were 7 Need for Speed games on the PS2. And actually all of them, well actually I think 6 of the 7 of them were very, very good games. Let's just be honest about this. Undercover, the last one released on the PS2, was a terrible game. For the simple reason, this literally got released like 2008, 2009. And by that point, obviously they were focusing on like the PS3, so EA Sports did not care about the PS2 version. That's not a very good game. Fight me on that. It's a fact. That's not the one, obviously. Then we go for the rest of them, shall we? The one before Undercover, Pro Street. It's a decent game, but compared to the other Need for Speed games, it doesn't hold up. It's just not that good. You might have noticed, by the way, the later PS2 games, they kind of like fell off a cliff in quality. They really did. So that leaves 5 generally good games. So basically, I'm going to go from like 5 to 1 in Need for Speed. Which one's decent, obviously. So, right. Carbon. Carbon by itself is a decent game. But this came after Most Wanted and Underground 2. And obviously, Most Wanted and Underground 2 up here. And Carbon was like was the first time Need for Speed was starting to go downhill in quality. The racing is decent, but the story really lets it down, to be honest. The story, compared to like Need for Speed Underground 2 and like Most Wanted, lets it down. So that was never going to make this list. Now the next 4 games were most likely going to make this list if I didn't have like 1 per franchise. The first PS2 game, the only one I don't own now, but I have played, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. Shockingly good game. When you hear the opening theme, that still gets caught in your head, by the way. Anyone? But it was never going to be the top game. It was never going to be the top game because the next 3 games are amazing games. So that was never going to make the list. Side note, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 is still the most expensive Need for Speed game. You're talking about 20 quid you're going to pay for that these days. And the only one I don't own yet. I will get it again, I will play it again, and I will enjoy it again. Fact. So, and the next 3 games are genuinely awesome games. Need for Speed Underground. What really started pushing the zenith of Need for Speed. Still holds up, still very customizable, still very fun. But compared to the next 2 games, it wasn't as good. But if that would have made easily like 6 or 7 on our list if there was no like 1 per franchise rule on this. So it now comes down to the 2 best games. Need for Speed Underground 2 and Need for Speed Most Wanted. Both are amazing games. And these 2 games have caused quite a few arguments between me, Colin, Dave, Dan, and other people in my life. Because for the last 10 years, I have stated that Most Wanted is better than Underground 2. Now, in the last 10 years, this argument has been going pretty strong between me and Colin. Especially me and Colin, my god. Now, for this top 10, I went through these games again from start to finish. Like, these are the only... These and the other, like, Burnout, and the top 5 I went through, like, from start to finish, because I wanted to put them, like, rank them properly, if you will. Not Gran Turismo 4, that was going to take me, like, years to finish that game. But anyway, getting sidetracked. Both have amazing soundtracks. Both have great stories. The story's probably better in Most Wanted, just for cutscenes and just general graphics. Graphics are pretty much the same. More cars in this Most Wanted. Chases in Most Wanted. You would think it'd be Most Wanted. So I thought I'll put this question in the Facebook PS2 modding community, which is about pretty strong. And they got a lot of responses, and many responses for Need for Speed Underground 2. And there were some generally good arguments or cases for that. But it comes down to what I like, what I prefer. My brain goes with Most Wanted, but the heart goes with Underground 2. Underground 2 is the best game for PS2 racing.
Are you sure about that?
The soundtrack is amazing. The handling is still amazing. There's something about making like pimp out cars. It's just hilarious. Like getting a dark purple Toyota Supra for night racing. It's just amazing. I will say though, the only thing I don't like about the Underground 2 is the customization, and by that I mean, but there's like 5 different shops, where in Most Wanted it's just one shop. Besides that, it is the better game. After 10 years, I have changed my mind, but it was close. Like the argument of like Super Mario 1 and Super Mario Bros. 3, they're both fantastic games, but one's slightly better than the other. Underground 2 is slightly better than the other, and after 10 years, I have changed my mind. By far, one of the best games on the PS2 period. Sold, I believe, like shocking, like EA Sports claimed that sold 8 million copies by the end of 2004. Take that with a pinch of salt, because the Wikipedia says like 2.5. Then you have that, like, you have to think, do I trust EA Sports or do I trust Wikipedia? Both terrible people to trust. So, take that with a pinch of salt. Do I believe they sold more than 2.5 million copies? Yes, I do. I think they sold a lot more than 2.5 million copies. So, probably EA Sports are correct rather than Wikipedia. But to this day, when people ask what's the best PS2 game, the amount of people who will bring up Need for Speed Underground 2 as the best PS2 game, period, it's shocking to me. Like how much people enjoy this game. And going for it again, I do understand. It is a hell of a time. Especially when you listen to Snoop Dogg and remix of Rise of the Storm. That's amazing. It's an amazing remix, and the music is great. So that is the top racing game on the PS2. Somewhat predictable, people might say, but it came close. It really did come close. Most Wanted, I love Most Wanted. Most Wanted would have been number 2 on this list if I had no like one per franchise rule. It would have been number 2 on this list, but I made the list for a reason. Anyway, thank you for watching this episode. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Please, if you have different opinions, put some comments in the comment section. I will reply to them. I do like having constructive conversations with people. So what's coming next? Next week will be not so much a joint episode, but will be like 2-in-1 episode. My original episode for this week had to change because we lost some footage. So I've combined 2 into 1 next week. You'll see what I mean next week. And my next trip will probably be to Thetford, which is only about an hour away from here, but Thetford and Attleborough, because there's an independent store in Attleborough I need to try. And I haven't been to Thetford CEX yet. I've been told it's not that good, but I do like to go to different places, try my luck, you never know. And I've never actually been to Thetford yet. I only live an hour away, but I've never actually been to Thetford. It's kind of hilarious when you think about it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.